very exciting. I get to use the gavel. So welcome to this meeting of the South Downs National Park Authority. My name is Sean McGeever, and I will be chairing today's meeting until a chair of the authority has been elected. So just the usual reminder, this meeting is being webcast by the National Park Authority and will be available for subsequent online viewing. By coming into the meeting, you are considered to have given your consent to be filmed or recorded, and for the possible use of images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. So to minimize disruptions, please could I ask you to switch mobile phones to silent if you haven't done so already. First of all, apologies for absence. Richard?
Apologies have been received from Mark Fairweather, John Hyland, Gary Marsh and Stephen Whale.
Thank you, Richard. So we move to item 2, election of chair. So nominations closed at 12 noon on 23rd of June, and there was only one nomination for the position of chair. Therefore, I declare that Vanessa Rowlands is elected as chair until the authority AGM in 2026. And I hand over.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gavel to you. There we go.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks everyone for your support. I really appreciate it. And as you know, I really feel that we are a team. This is a team effort. And thank you for everything over the past year. As chair, I feel like I want to make sure I go to all the committee meetings. I try very hard to attend every P&R and every planning committee meeting that I can, because I think it's really important to be there and hear what's being decided. But I can't do this on my own. This is definitely a joint team effort, and I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing, and especially when we reflect on who's sitting around this table and who isn't sitting around this table. And I think all of us have made a real concerted effort to widen our thoughts and include as many people into our thinking as possible in our decision making. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to move the meeting on. So item number 3 is the election of the deputy chair. And before I carry on, I just want to say thank you very much to Tim Burr, who has been deputy chair for the past 2 years and has been the most amazing deputy support to me in the past 2 years. He has always been there to cover for me in any meeting that needed to be covered. So many parish councils Tim has been and spoken to, covered me in lots of meetings, also been a very good reflective person, and we have worked very well together, and so thank you, Tim. And I just want to... Okay, so the nominations for the deputy chair closed at 12 noon on the 23rd of June, and there was only one nomination for the position of deputy chair, and therefore I declare Mark Potter is elected as deputy chair until the authority AGM in 2026. Do you want to say anything, Mark?
I'd love to.
Thought you would.
A man of few words.
Yeah.
I'll keep it short, thank you. I've had a note. Oh, a bit closer. Yes, and I'll keep it short as well. Vanessa, just want to say thank you very much for your support and encouragement and leadership since I've joined the park, so thank you so much. Tim, particularly for his excellent work as deputy and for the generous nomination for me to take over as deputy chair, so thank you to Tim. And Jerry is my seconder and local councillor. Thank you very much, Jerry. I want to give particular thanks also to all the officers for their support and advice over my first year with the authority, and particularly since joining, so thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it and will continue to enjoy it, I'm sure. Will do my best. And to all the members, I'll obviously do my best to serve and support the best interests of the park for all those who value our unique and very special landscape. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Just going to remind everybody that South Downs members have a primary responsibility for ensuring that the authority furthers the national park purposes and duty. Members regard themselves first and foremost as members of the authority and will act in the best interests of the authority and of the park, rather than as representatives of their appointing authority or any interest groups. Just to say, you've got some printouts on the table in front of you with proposed appointments to committees, along with their chairs and deputy chairs, and appointments to outside bodies. These are for consideration at agenda item 12. Agenda items 16 to 20 on the agenda are minutes of the meetings of the authorities committees and are to note. If anyone does want to say anything about those minutes, could you just let me know now? And then we'll come to it later on in the meeting. But if anyone doesn't have anything, no? Okay, that's great. I'm going to move on to declarations of interest at item 4. Does any member have an interest they would like to declare on any agenda item? No? Okay. Fine. Item 5, minutes of the previous meetings held on the 27th of March and the 22nd of May, the NPA minutes. Is there any point of accuracy that any member would like to raise on these minutes? Should I go through them? I can do the page numbers, actually. I like doing this. Right, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep, Tim? Yeah.
The fourth bullet down from the top, I think that the is should be if. The if should be is. The response to question 1 is informed by their view that it's better for the authorities to be able to influence decision making.
Yep. Got it. Thanks, Tim. 14, 15, 16, 17.
Yes, on 17.
Yep.
Which is in paragraph 291.
Yep.
Third bullet down. I think that it should read, whilst there was a small element of private finance through the purchase of voluntary credits, it might be advisable to use a different term. In other words, there rather than this.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Nope. Okay. Great. Thank you. Item 6, urgent items. Do we have any urgent items? No. Public participation? No. Okay. Item 8, need for Part 2 exclusion. Appendix 5 of agenda item 12, if anyone wants to discuss what's in that appendix, when we get to agenda item 12, you can let me know and we can go into private session. Okay, thank you. Item 9 is the authority chair update, and I've just got some corrections before Andrew gets me. Andrew, I'm so sorry, Andrew. I put you down as chair of the local access forum when of course we all know it's Doug Jones, and that you just sit on it with Tim Burr, but you are actually chair of the Sustainable Communities Fund. Is that right, Andrew? Yes, great. So I apologise for that. You're a very busy man, so I just get confused. And then I just want to highlight on 2.5, the Sussex Heritage Trust Awards. Our winner of our award, which I couldn't put in the report, was the Cockshoot Stream Restoration, which won our design award. I mean, it won 3 on the day, didn't it, Antonia? They were very popular. And what was really great about it was just talking to the judges who did the other awards, and they were so excited about it too, weren't they? The landscape people. And so it's really caught caught an imagination. It's like people are really getting it. They're really excited about, isn't it? Do you want to say anything, Antonia? Go on. This is always just me.
Well, I don't know if everybody here has seen the Cockshoot project, but it's just seemed to tick all our boxes in terms of landscape and wildlife and public access. Essentially, the part of the ooze was allowed to form an enormous water meadow. The spoil was used to build up a bank which everybody's using as a nice place to walk. Lots of local landowners were very sceptical about how it all would all work, but are now copying what's been done, and all delivered by fantastically enthusiastic volunteers who are getting lots of local residents now to sort of act almost as defenders of the project, and they're sort of stepping in to warn people who are walking dogs irresponsibly not to do that. Lots and lots of, there's a removed invasive species, and lots of better plants are coming back, and it's an enormous win for Lewis, I think, and the wider
definitely.
area.
Yeah, they call it the Lewis Wetlands now, don't they? Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone have anything they'd like to point out or correct me on any further on my report? No, but can I see a show of hands to note it? Oh, who? Oh, sorry, John, did you want to say? Yeah.
I just wanted to ask whether that you're referring to, was it the same scheme that was awarded last year, or is it an extension of that?
It's the same scheme that we gave our own South Downs Design Awards to, and that won the People's Choice last year, and it won 3 last week. So it's a multi-award winning design. Can I just say, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so should we go show of hands to note the report, if that's all right, everybody? Thank you so much. Great. Okay, item number 10, the Chief Exec's progress report. Sean.
Okay, thank you. I won't go into the report specifically, but just as I've said in it, what I'm trying to do is sort of change the format of the report to make it as easy as possible for, I guess, me and you to be able to make an assessment of how we're doing. So the first attempt is to look at how we use the corporate plan with the current indicators, have a RAG rating system, and then where we are not green, well, where we're green, we celebrate, and where we're not green, we try and put some narrative in terms of how we get back to green or why we are where we are. So hopefully you found that useful. We will look at the other sections as well to see whether we can find a way to present that also in a sort of dashboard kind of way. But I think I will always keep some narrative, because there's always interesting and great stories to tell, and I don't want to lose that altogether and make it just a dry numbers game. But so I present to you this, and if you've got any feedback, I know I've had some quick feedback on one of the indicators from Mark Potter just now on KPI, high-level target number 8, digitally engage, I think 100,000 people. Now, in the narrative, we've said we've got a following of about 115,000, but we've actually got digitally engaged 155. And so I need to go back and work out what we mean by each of those things and just clarify that. So apologies for that lack of clarity. But otherwise, I will open it for any comments or feedback, or otherwise pass back to Vanessa to...
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask? Or yes, Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Sean, I've got one question about 2.5 on 28. It's slightly cryptic what you say in 2.5, but my question is about the phrase, we're expecting changes in the offer to farmers. I wonder if you'd like to say what we're expecting, because clearly it's a really interesting issue for the whole farming community, and I've talked to lots of my local farmers. They just have a huge range of what they think may or may not happen. I'd be very interested in your perspective on what those changes may be, because I think we have a huge number of farmers in the National Park who'd be very interested in more detail on that particular phrase.
I'm afraid I don't have a huge amount of detail. I'm waiting like everybody else, but we've seen I think with the farming incentive scheme, certainly where we saw SFI closed off early, we've had little indications in speeches here and there that we've heard from ministers that actually there's going to be more of a focus on the nature outcomes. So you would imagine SFI potentially to be smaller and also more focused on some of the sort of higher level elements, but also potentially focused geographically and also possibly means tested. And those are the sort of indications we've seen coming out. So all we know is that they're having a really good think about elms. We know that the budget, despite what the narrative in the spending review being positive, is less than was originally intention for elms. It was 2.4 billion a couple of years ago. It's now 2 billion plus 300,000 of sort of additional bits that put on this. So we know they're going to have to take it from somewhere. So that's all I mean by that comment really, is that we await to see what those look like, and then we need to look at how we as the national park. There's also farming in protected landscapes, which we're waiting to see. We've had some positive noises that will carry on. So how do we make sure that we use that to help, I guess, attenuate some of the potentially more negative impacts of a redesigned elm, and how do we engage with the more positive, which might be more geographically focused, so that we get a really good offer for farmers in the park.
Great. I've got Janet, then Paul, and then John. Janet.
Well, Chairman, mine was purely to say, for the sake of area disclosure, should I have reported that I'm a farmer and I didn't know this was going to be discussed, so do I have to declare? I'm all right. Okay, that's fine.
Thanks, Janet. Paul Bevan.
Thanks. Paragraph 4.4, affordable housing. I'm pleased about the recognition that affordable housing development remains a key priority, but the identification of just 32 homes seems a bit surprising. I'm sure there are more. I wondered if we had any more wide-ranging figures on how much affordable housing has been delivered.
I'll pass that on to Tim. I think we particularly mentioned this one because it's such a sort of, we think, an exciting scheme, and draw attention to that. But Tim, do you want to talk more broadly?
Thank you. Yes, the 32 is just one individual scheme, and as Sean said, that's the one that it seems to have come through and is a landmark or an exemplar. More generally, we're delivering around 40 to 50 a year, but perhaps most interestingly, and it's why we're doing some work on it, of the 2,000-ish permissions out there for housing right now, about 520 odd are for affordable homes that have yet to be built. So actually we're focusing our efforts on how we can try and get those to be delivered, as well as bringing through a new supply through the local plan review.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to come back?
Just to be clear, so about 25% in the pipeline, you think?
Of the existing permissions, yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. John Cross.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, 4.5, Sean, you mentioned stories, and we talk about still funding for Brereton Village Hall and essentially making that its own little powerhouse. And I think that's just a great story to promote. And I don't know if the comms team are going to do that, because I think there's a lot of village halls throughout the park that are thinking of doing renovations and what have you, and that there are grants to make these much more sustainable spaces for locals, and also can contribute to the decarbonisation of the park. Thank you.
No, you're right. Yeah?
Sorry, Joe, just for clarification, you're saying you'd like the comms team to sort of promote this kind of thing so that other people can see what's possible? Yeah. Okay, we'll take that away. Yeah, definitely. No, it is a great story. We do comms around still, but we tend to do it in sort of big lumps, but actually it might be worth focusing on one or two projects to get the sense of what's going on. I think they are good. So thank you, yeah.
Yeah, we keep discussing it in my village hall, like the dream would be to do this, but yeah, it takes different. Anybody else have anything they would like to? Stephen.
Yeah, firstly, I think it's great that the progress against corporate plan is structured like this, and it's easy to see and easy to focus in. So that's really good. I've got a specific question on 3.1, where the comment is on the amber status regarding the land managed for nature. The last phrase, reflecting the measured approach to delivery. Could you explain a little bit about what that means, that measured approach is?
I think what we had was quite a big lump of delivery in the year before, and then a lot of this year's really been getting the pipeline ready for the next year. So I think it's just a way of saying politely, reflecting the slower delivery, or diplomatically or evasively potentially, the slower delivery in this year. But we still remain confident because we've got a lot of projects in the pipeline that we will hit or exceed the target by the end date.
Great, thank you. Mark. Oh, Sean.
Thank you, Chair. Just a note on the really positive numbers on National Park for All, so 3.10 and 3.9 above, how exceptionally far beyond the target we set ourselves, which is a great indicator that we're so capable of delivering against this really important target, but also that we'll be increasing the target for next year. So that's a well done, I think, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything? I just want to say that I really enjoyed this new format of the report. It was really engaging. I knew what I was looking at and made sense of everything. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Okay, can I see a show of hands for this agenda item, please? Thank you so much. Great, we're going to move on to agenda item 11. And Steph's here. And I think you're going to kick off with a film, aren't you, Steph?
I am, if that's okay. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. My name's Stephanie Summers. I'm a project manager at the park and the project manager for the Ouse Valley Climate Action Project. I'm going to try and be quick because I have got a lot of slides, but some of them are giving a basic overview of the project because I'm assuming there might be some of you that don't know a lot about it and how it started. And I think it's got really interesting origins that have contributed to where it is right now. But first of all, I'm going to play a short video and then I'll launch into the presentation. Now, hopefully, the idea of playing the video to you is to give you a flavour of the real grassroots community aspect to this project. Okay, the best laid plans, apologies for that. Hopefully it'll be sent round to you to watch afterwards. Okay, so thank you for having me today. So as I said, I wanted to just give a very brief overview because I don't want to emphasise, the origins of the project too heavily, but if you aren't aware of it, it's really worth knowing how we came to be. So Ouse Valley Climate Action, which originally started off as Ouse Valley Cares, was first mooted in 2019 as a project, and eventually we got some development funding of £150,000, and this is from the National Lottery Community Fund Climate Action Fund, which rolls off the tongue. And that funding was basically to go out across the Ouse Valley Climate Action Project area, and the project area you can see up on the screen. It starts at Barkham, very much follows the river Ouse, which we've already mentioned today already, downstream, encompassing the towns, villages and hamlets either side, so Lewis most notably one of the biggest towns, and then the villages all the way down to the mouth of the sea, which encompass 3 coastal towns of Peacehaven, Newhaven and Seaford. So that's the project area outlined in blue. So myself and a colleague back in 2021 went out across the area with the remit of this funding, which was to enable grassroots community-led climate action. So we went out, and the first thing we had to do was say, well, what's out there at the moment? We engaged, like nobody's business, as James is aware, and everyone else here, for 18 months, or just over a year, and then it took a little while to put the bid together. We engaged with 156 groups. I won't go through all the figures there, you can see it, but we went on local radio, we piggybacked on events, we basically had a remit to go out and find out what was out there, and we really did do that to the best of our ability. Obviously, we didn't capture everything, but I think we got a pretty good idea of what was out there, and what we found was a real emerging climate action desire, but a community that had been absolutely decimated by COVID. So the groups that we spoke to had thriving organisations, but they had lost their volunteers, they lost some of the key members of their groups. Some of the collaborators they'd worked with weren't coming back after COVID. At this point, I think we were still having lockdowns when we first started. Certainly the one-way system in Midhurst was still in place. And yeah, it was a community that had the will, but not necessarily the means. And we said to them, what do you need? And they said, we need our volunteer base back. Actually, top of the list was money. It always is. We need money. We need our volunteers back. We need more training. We need upskilling. We need to find out what people are doing, to share our knowledge, to learn from our neighbours, etc. So with that in mind, we put together a bid with the amazing Emma Allen. I have to give Alan a massive accolade. From the park. And actually, it's probably worth going back to the first slide so you can see at the top there who the project partners are, the board. So it's a 10 partnership board, and I've got to say, I will go through the lessons learned, but the board has been one of our strengths throughout the project, and it's not been easily achieved. I think James, as the chair of the board, will testify to that. It's an amazingly collaborative board, and the lottery, the one thing they always comment on about us is the effectiveness of our board. And I've spoken to some of my colleagues from the same Climate Action Fund funding pot across the country, and they're all a bit envious of how well our board worked together. So that's fantastic. But yeah, our board is made up of organisations representing the local community. Our district council, Lewis District Council, has been a fantastic enabler and linker together. We've got an energy strand, and we've got organisations representing youth and biodiversity in the local environment. So with that in mind, again, a whistle-stop tour. Hopefully you'll get a copy of this afterwards to make it available. We were awarded £2 million net of lottery funding to carry forward a delivery project of 3 years, which started in October 2022. And I've presented on this to some of you a few times before at some of the members' events, so this might be old hat to you. But that 3-year delivery project commenced with the same partnership in place. We directly funded 25 community groups. And again, it's all I cannot emphasise, I'll go on to lessons learned about how grassroots it really was, but very much grassroots groups in the local area. I'll talk about the themes of the project, but to give you a flavour of just how big it is, we had 54 separate work packages, which is what we called them, and deliverables around our aims as a project. So 25 of those were community-led, but it's worth saying many, many more community groups have benefited than 25. 11 were partner-led and 18 were led by the OVCA project team. And it wasn't just funding, it was absolutely essential that it came with a package of support, networking, training, etc., and everything focused on building up a legacy of tools, skills, knowledge, resilience for this community for when the project ended. Don't expect you to look through all of those, but I put this up for the first time at one of the community events we ran last year, and it was really impactful because a lot of it divides the deliverables up into sort of, separate siloed entities, if you like. But what the active travel people didn't know was that we had a whole youth element, and the youth element didn't know that we had a whole energy strand, and the energy strand didn't necessarily know we had a whole big community garden strand, and that we were dealing with Swifts in Lewis and Seaford, and everything was working together. And one of my best moments is when I went to one of the local secondary schools and met with them, and they said, well, we haven't benefited from much of your funding yet. And I said, well, tell me what's happening. And she said, well, we've got some Swiftbox being installed. And I said, yeah, OVCA are funding that. And we've got an active travel event. Yeah, OVCA are funding that. And we've got a big sustainability event in the summer. Yeah, we're also funding that. And, you know, it was, and we're talking about energy and solar panels on our roof. Yeah, that's also OVCA. And by the end of it, she was saying, well, what else can we do together? You know, and it's been, so when you have those conversations, when I put this up at the event last year, one of the groups came up to me who had been quite hard on us at the beginning because we did have some teething issues around finances, which I'll get to in the lessons learned. But one of the groups came up to me and said, I am so sorry because I had no idea how big this was and how much of an impact you were making. So actually it's really useful for you and everyone else to see just how much we've been delivering and what a big project this has been. Again, don't expect you to read all of this, but it's to give you an idea of the themes we worked around within this project. Very much driven by the lotteries over aims, but our aims of the project were to deliver community and enable community-led climate action around nature recovery, resilience and connectivity, knowledge, wellbeing and skills, and sustainable energy and active travel. And underpinning all of that is creating this legacy, making sure that what doesn't happen to, has happened to many other projects, that at the end of OVCA, things don't fall off a cliff and we lose all this knowledge and this momentum, huge momentum that we've gained throughout the project. And I would add the lottery funding has a leaning towards what they call, not a term I love, but you know, everyone's got their different terms, underserved communities. And for the purpose of our project and where we are in our part of East Sussex, underserved communities really, according to the indices of deprivation, really point to people who are experiencing economic shortfalls and stress. So that was our key underserved communities, as well as anyone who's considered sort of marginalised or from protected characteristics. This is not the successes of OVCA. It was really hard to, I'm trying to cut this down to be as short as I can, but I've got some pictures after this. I just wanted to highlight some real key successes. There are so many parts of this project to be proud of. And every time I do an event or attend an event or go to, as you know, Sean was saying, you go to, and Vanessa, you go to as many events as possible. I do that as well with the team because we are so embedded in the community now. And there are so many things to shout about. But I think somebody mentioned the Cockshoot restoration. We were slightly involved as that as well. We put some funding towards it, a little bit of seed funding. But some key successes are the energy champions. I have to mention these, and that you would have seen them in the video, which is slightly why I wanted to play it. It's worth noting, since OVCA was first muted, we've had 5 prime ministers, a global pandemic, growing geopolitical instability, as well as increased adverse weather events. So, you know, and an economic crisis within our own country and an energy crisis. So I've put Energy Champions as our key project success because at the beginning of this project, the intention was to have a team of energy advisors who would go out and say to everybody, switch to this provider, you'll lower your tariff. And within months of the project starting, the energy hike, the energy crisis happened. And suddenly we were having conversations and being approached by people from the community saying, we can't afford to eat food and heat our homes, and the heat or eat term, the awful term came to be. So we changed the remit of those energy advisors to become energy champions. And they have gradually, bit by bit, built up this amazing support in the community by visiting food banks, or whatever term you want to use for them within the area, but food banks, food supermarkets, and going to town halls and meeting people where they're at, and basically offering advice. And I've been in some of the sessions and have come out choking back tears because, you know, you see people who are at their wits' end with regards to their energy bills, and this team of advisors giving them tiny things they can do, but also helping them apply for grants. This is life-changing stuff, and we've got some amazing case studies that have come out of it. Just aware of the time. Also, we were able to support the Rights of River for the River Ouse momentum that's still ongoing. Hopefully you've all heard about that. It's gained international attention now, but we were able to give a lot of support to that because it wasn't even in discussion when we started the project. Our community gardens and orchards, the sharing and learning. So I mentioned at the beginning about how on their knees, I think some of the organisations were, and there's one garden in particular that springs to mind. I went to visit them in the development phase, and I came away thinking, I don't know if this garden are going to survive. They were really low. They had been a vibrant garden, they'd had a little pond, they'd had the local nursery and Sussex Wildlife Trust coming in, and no one was coming anymore. The pond was overgrown, the nursery were too afraid to take the children out after COVID. Sussex Wildlife Trust didn't have the staff because they were obviously hit just the same as we all were. They weren't quite back in the community at that point. And they'd lost their volunteer base. They said, no one's coming. And so I sat with them and said, what do you need? And they said, well, for starters, the clubhouse is really drab. It needs doing up. You know, we've got the floors sticking up. And I said, that's an easy win for us. We can help. You know, if it makes your volunteers want to come, we can help there. What else? Well, we need a new polytunnel. It keeps getting vandalised. Very, very small amount of funding went to this garden, less than £2,000 of funding. But with it, our community ranger, Jessie, went in and weeded and cleared up the pond. Then we got the local nursery back in and Jessie did some sessions. Then we got some other volunteers back in and gradually this garden started to get back up off their feet. And then the other day, through my front door, because I live in Seaford in the area, our local Seaford Scene publication dropped in and it had a whole 2-page spread of this community garden talking about their thriving events, how they've got more volunteers, thanking one of my team for all their support. And I thought that's the small successes of OVCA that you probably don't see every day. Another huge success been our training offering. So we went out across the OVCA community groups, but not just limited to them, to anyone involved in climate action and biodiversity crisis, and said, what do you need? And we got ranked their requests for training, and it was everything from horticultural to tree pruning to how to manage volunteers. But one thing that came out was some really small amounts of training that were huge blockers for the community groups that were quite easy for us to release those blocks. For instance, a lot of the groups said, we can't get volunteers back because we can't afford to pay for first aid training. First aid training does not cost a lot. So we said, well, that's really easy. So we put on some first aid training, not something you'd think that OVCA would do, but we've ended up doing 5 separate sessions now because it was so oversubscribed. We did some first aid training. We got those volunteers first aid trained, and then suddenly they were allowed to go into the organisations. And it's a tiny bit of funding that's released a huge blockage for the community groups. Our collaborations with our partners have been amazing. So Ouzenadas Rivers Trust, Lewis District Council, Sussex Wildlife Trust, Frog Life, you name them. Sussex Bay, we've got a developing relationship with Sussex Bay, Will to Waves. Everywhere we've gone, I'm going to say support from partner organisations further down, but I'm going to mention it now. I've sort of watched a number of Sean's presentations recently, and obviously I've worked with James and Vanessa and the rest of the team for quite a while. There's a real buzz in the park at the moment about relationships, and there seems to be a real, as I said, a buzz around building those relationships and how really integral and important they are. And it's something we have really felt from the beginning of OVCA. And the support from the park has been the biggest enabler for the project, without a doubt. It hasn't been easy at times. I'll go through lessons learned in a minute, but I would like to thank everyone, especially James on the board, for the support, because it's been phenomenal and it's really made the difference to the team and the project. Again, our partnership and our board's been really effective, but one thing I hear throughout the project is what an enabler OVCA's been. Whether that's been support from the team, the training offering, the funding, it's been an enabler. It's been networking people together. It's been creating those toolkits, those shared resources, and making sure that they're shared across the area. Also, I've put a picture up there saying innovation encouraged. Got so many examples, I'm trying to be quick. Another small example, one of our local spaces, dead space around a local leisure centre, said, could we have a very small amount of money to plant some fruit trees? We said, absolutely, this sounds amazing. And then they, innovative people that they are, and this fund has encouraged innovation. It's allowed experimentation, which has been really good. Unlike some other funding sources, it's been really encouraging of that. So this group came back and said, there's a whole load of rainwater pouring off the roof of the leisure centre. Couldn't we harvest it? So we went back to the lottery and said, could we borrow a little bit or use a little bit of the contingency fund left over from the development phase and give it to this group? And the lottery said, let's see what they do with it. It's been phenomenal. So now they've got these troughs which collect the rainwater from the leisure centre roof. Someone's developed a 3D printed measure which measures how much rainwater they're saving. They've got some other funding for some water collection systems, and now they're using it. The district council funded some piping under the pavement to water a huge flower bed they've now installed. and it's a thriving area. And everyone from the local football club to the children that use it to the people that work in the cafeteria said it's just changed the space. It's changed people's lives, and that's a very small amount of funding. So I'm just going to run through some pictures here. I won't talk too much about these, but it's always nice to see it in action. So what I've tried to do is just put a collection of pictures together. So this is Jamie, our active travel officer, who has a very unique ability to connect with anyone, particularly underserved communities. He's taken unaccompanied asylum seekers out on who wouldn't leave their homes, out on bike rides, and been able to donate or loan some bikes to them and get them actually out working. He started a Learn to Ride scheme because sadly cycling proficiency has gone from a lot of schools. Started off with a couple of children being pushed up with their parents, and now it's oversubscribed every single week. And then we support Cycle Lewis. They've done a map which our logo's all over and is flying out the door. We're now supporting another map for Seaford and Newhaven to encourage people to know those links and networks. And then, of course, Lewis Climate Hub, they've got fantastic seasons, Lewis Climate Hub. We're supporting their active travel season. Again, another huge success is the hubs and networks. So when we started this project, Lewis Climate Hub had a small backstreet hub, really successful, but not huge footfall. They're now in one of the best buildings in central Lewis. And we were able to support Newhaven Green Centre and Seaford Environmental Alliance in getting off the ground, Green Havens network. And what's exciting is how all these groups work together and share their resources, and they speak to each other. And we're not claiming all the success for that because it's the people, but they've networked together through OVCA being that enabler. And then the youth work, I have to mention this. So just a couple of weekends ago, we attended a sustainability fair at Seaford Head School. James McCleary, our local MP, came. And I actually did a Facebook Live with James back in 2021 when we first started, way before he was an MP and way before the project properly kicked off, which enabled me to grab him at the end and persuade him to do a piece to camera for OVCA, which we'll be releasing shortly. Again, another success story. We went around the forest school. We went around the primary schools and said, what forest school activities are you doing? It turned out a lot of them weren't doing very much at all. So and it took a while to build up the relationships with the schools, but we trained some teachers, TAs, and local youth leaders in the community up to level 3 forest schools through the Sussex Wildlife Trust. We've now set up a network, and the Sussex Wildlife Trust, just a couple of weeks ago, came to us saying, we haven't got a network here. We couldn't really invest in it at the time, but now you've done it, we'd like to extend our Eastbourne network and take that network in with us, which is just fantastic legacy. So I'm really excited about that. And then in October, we're holding a big Climate Questions Novka Youth event in Newhaven, which Sean will be attending and sitting on the panel of, along with James McCleary, our MP, and some other representatives from the local area. So this has been an enormous success in connecting our local youth. And I have to mention the OVCA team, because without them, the absolute passion they've displayed and dedication to the community, and the fact that we've got the same team that we started with back in 2022 when the delivery project started, and that's not been by luck. It's been through us investing in the team, constantly supporting each other, because we've been through our own trials and tribulations as a team. I mean, you would not believe the life events we've been through as a team. But we've all been there for each other, supported by our organisations. And this team have worked so hard to make those connections. At the beginning, people weren't as keen to engage with us. People are quite suspicious of large funding and wanting to be taken over, etc. But gradually, bit by bit, we now can't walk around Lewis, Seaford, Newhaven or Peacehaven without someone coming up and chatting to us. And that's exactly what as it should be. So very briefly, lessons learned. We built in some flexible funding pots at the start of the project, and Emma and I have said so many times it's the best thing we did, and I'd encourage. So rather than we had to have some prescriptive funding pots, but we were able to build in some slight flexibility around certain themes, such as let's have a pot of money dedicated to responding to community need around sustainability and climate awareness. And that's been fantastic because it enabled us to respond to things like Love Our Roos, and also all the massive changes that have taken place within the area, adverse weather events, new groups popping up. So that's been fantastic. I have to mention, I said to James, can I mention Civica? I have to. Civica, the financial system used by the park, Brighton and Hove, no shade on Brighton and Hove, we love them, we work with them really well, but Civica has definitely been prohibitive for a large-scale project like this. As a project manager, not being able to just hop on a system and find out the balance of my project code at any given moment is horrifying. And also, it's not set up for managing large-scale payments, numerous payments to small groups. It's been painful. We're there now because we're at the end of the project, but it was quite painful at the beginning, and it caused a delay and way too much time spent on that. I've been quite vocal, so,
Good.
it's not
Good.
it's not news. Grassroots. I will never forget James saying at the beginning of the project, well, we didn't realise just how grassroots they were. These were grassroots groups. Some of them were 2-3 person bands, some of them 1 person bands. And that came with its own unique challenges around, some of the groups didn't record even basic data, how many people they were engaging with. Some of the groups had little knowledge about how to use social media. So we had to divert more effort and funding and time into supporting those groups, understanding that they have their own challenges. They've got their own lives. None of them are paid for what they do, and that if they are sometimes overly passionate or overly concerned or about a certain issue, it's because they're coming from a good place. And I'm still reminding the team of that on a weekly basis. But we understand those groups and we understand where they're coming from. And but yeah, the support needed for those grassroots groups, they come to us every other day now and say, thank you so much, thank God for Ovca, what next? Working with towns and parish councils, I think it's quite lucky that I was a clerk when my children were smaller. I was a parish clerk for several parishes, and that's been absolutely fantastic for working with town and parish councils, because I can understand where a lot of them are coming from. I know a lot of you sit on them as well. But also I'd say a real lesson for us has been the turnover. So where we've developed a project with a town council, and then the clerk has changed, which it has done for all of our town councils in the project area, not the handover for the project hasn't necessarily been as complete as it would have been. We might have a whole new set of councillors who feel differently about the project. So with the wonderful benefit of hindsight, I'd say I would have got some very firm MOUs in place very early on with those, quite watertight to take those forward. And also, again, relationships. I can't emphasise enough how beneficial the relationship building element that we focused on, attending those events, even when I did one on Friday night until 10:30, and I thought, oh God, this is the last thing I want. And then I came home going, yay, I wish it would last longer. Because the people that you meet on the ground are the people delivering and the ones that we need to build those relationships with, because they are telling us what they want and what they need. And also seed funding, as I mentioned about the cockshoot, where we've placed seed funding, others have come. That's been amazing to watch. A small amount of funding encourages others to do the same, and our collaborations have proved so successful. So, final slide. What next for us? We're just about to commence a legacy year. So the success of the 3-year project and the development phase before that led to us being invited by the lottery to apply for some legacy funding. So we applied for the maximum amount of funding, which was £200,000 over the year, and we were successful, which is absolutely amazing. Why the purpose of the legacy? Well, again, some of the groups are so grassroots, their recording of their outcomes and the impact they're having was so basic, and it's taken us time to get the monitoring evaluation off the ground as a team as well. There have been some delays with us. We don't feel like we are at a stage where they're maximising the impact of what they're doing. We are finding funders are really wanting much more exhaustive reporting and data than they ever have before. All of the groups are coming back to us. One of our most successful groups got turned down from some funding. And we said, how on earth did you not get that? And the funders, they rang the funder and they said, but we're doing this, we're doing that. And the funder said, you didn't give us any data to show us that you were doing that. So the funders seem to be much more about the data. We need to help the groups get that data. So during the legacy project, one of our key drivers is going to be setting the groups up so they have the mechanisms, the tools and the skills to record that data to go for their own funding applications, but also to target their activities. Some of the groups we went to, said we want to go to that area of the town, and we said, well, why? Which area of the towns are visiting you? We don't know. So it's getting that basic data so that they can then target their activities, and that'll be a key focus of legacy. Also, mapping our impact and the collaboration. So we're looking at, I've forgotten the name. What's the name of the mapping? I've forgotten the name of the mapping that Emma and I are looking at. Nope, forgotten. We're looking at some mapping, ripple effect mapping, sorry. We're looking at ripple effect mapping so that we can really start to map out how we've collaborated with others and brought in extra funding, but not just extra funding, other support from other areas and partners, and indeed other geographical areas as well. Obviously, we'll be looking at additional funding sources, but most importantly of all, at the moment, we're going out to the community saying, what next for you? What do you need? Obviously, funding's top of the list for all groups, but that's our main focus at the moment. We're running legacy workshops to ask the groups, what do you need to take what you're doing forward to the next step, to stay, with your head above water? And without doubt, all of them have said one of the biggest benefits of OVCA, you'd think it would be funding, has been the networking, has been the bringing together and the sharing and the collaborating and the tools. And that's been really nice to hear. Thank you. Hopefully that wasn't too quick. It was a whistle-stop tour of legacy and everything that we've done. But thank you very much for listening to us today.
That was great, Steph. Thank you so much. I mean, I could listen to you all day, to be fair. It's really good. And it is so nice to see that project. And I was here when it started. In fact, I met you when you were a clerk, didn't I?
You did, yes, you did. Well, I was at
so it's so lovely to see what you've done with that project, and the fact that you highlighted that the team has stayed the same, and that's great. Very exciting. So members, does anyone have anything they'd like to ask? Paul, yes, as a parish councillor in the Ouse Valley.
In the Ouse Valley,
I was hoping
well, I'm
that you would put your
particularly
hand up.
interested in what you were saying about the lottery priorities of reaching deprived communities. And you mentioned quite a lot about Newhaven, which obviously has high indices of deprivation, but very little about Peacehaven. And I'm quite close to Peacehaven and really haven't seen a great deal of visible evidence, and lots of the stuff you've done isn't visible anyway, so it's not a criticism, of Ouse Valley Climate Action. And I wondered how you've got on there and whether, with the next stage, there might be more work to do in galvanising activity.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we do have some projects in Peacehaven. So we've got a Gateway to the Downs project, which will be marking at the end of the Centenary Park, or the back of Centenary Park. There's obviously a route to the Southland National Park, which lots of locals don't know is a route to the Southland National Park. We've worked extensively with Peacehaven Orchard. They're one of our biggest projects. We work with the council as well. So we've supported their zero carbon Peacehaven events. We're doing a lot of work with PCS School. And that's been absolutely fantastic. So we funded some work for them around what they're doing. All the schools now have their climate action plans they have to produce. So we've worked with Peacehaven Community School on their climate action plan, on the outdoor learning area, but also taking some of their activities into the community. We did do some events in the Meridian Centre, which is obviously currently in a state of flux. So I think Peacehaven, the lack of available community space there has been a bit of an issue. But yeah, we work. I met with George, it's the new clerk George, isn't it? I met with George a few months ago about other projects we could work on. We do have some funding set aside for a Peacehaven Climate Hub as well. So that's the next thing that we'd like to actually kick off before the legacy period starts.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to Peacehaven meeting fairly soon, so I might get in touch with you before I go. Actually, that'd be really helpful. Yeah, sorry, Paul.
Just to say, I think the gateway and the signage is critical. I was hoping to see it when I went there recently, but it hasn't happened yet. But I think, the connecting that community to the park is hugely important.
Do you mean, Paul, like our kind of Core 10 steel signage?
No, these are more interpretation signage within the park
okay.
to show people the routes through, so it's accessible to all.
Actually, we saw some of the... actually, I'm not going to talk about that. Sorry. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to... So I've got Antonia, and then I've got Daniel.
Yes, I had a question about the Energy Champions work, which is obviously important for climate action. There are a lot of local authorities who do give advice on insulating your home, tariffs, and all those kinds of things. What can you do to make sure that you're not overlapping or onto what they do, and obviously they're then using up efforts which could be put into something else?
So thank you for that. I'm not within obviously the energy team are part of the project, but they're a very siloed niche aspect of it. So They work very closely with the district council and the town councils and parish councils. So actually, I think one of our team is a parish councillor. So they actually hold events with parish councils, collaborate with them. They go along and have materials that they can give out for free, etc. So I think that there's no issue that they're working certainly in partnership. But a lot of what they do is in partnership with the district council, as I said, who are very well plugged in. But I think it's just a case of them. They did go through a phase of going to lots of parish council meetings and holding events at parish councils, but they weren't hugely well attended. So they've sort of slightly changed tack recently, and they're going to community events within those parishes. So I know I haven't mentioned a lot of the little parishes, but we do work with Kingston, Barkham, Ring was sort of bigger town, but we do work with all the parishes in the area. We've got little projects going on in most of them.
Thank you. I've got Daniel and then Melanie.
Thank you. I should perhaps declare an interest because I'm trustee of, former finance director and now trustee of one of your partners, STDA. But and this is maybe a question for the management rather than you. But given the apparently fairly modest amounts involved and the fairly clear return on investment, not just financial but more generally, is there any scope for some kind of OVCA 2.0 led by the park, financially and otherwise?
Yeah.
Well, you know, listening to Steph, it's amazing, isn't it, to hear the work that's gone on, and it's important to underline that that's delivered by this great swathe of community groups, and they are our delivery force, and what this has done has really incubated those groups and provided them with the funding and the expertise to accelerate their work. These are all social entrepreneurs, and in the commercial world, you'd have a incubation or accelerator fund, wouldn't you, that would come with that funding and advice. So this is exactly similar to that. And I think there is a risk, you know, particularly considering devolution, that there's a danger some of those community groups may see a reduction in the support they receive with the formation of unitary councils. And I think that's a risk, but it's also an opportunity for the park. So in answer to your question, I think definitely. I think we need to think carefully about it and whether it's perhaps expanded beyond the current boundary, but it's certainly something we're considering and something that's built into the considerations during the legacy year as well.
Melanie.
Thank you. Unusually for me, I've got a techie question. You said, Steph, that Civica wasn't suited to the needs of the project, which is understandable because it was built for a different purpose. But I just wondered, given that we as a park will be moving towards perhaps larger scale projects, multiple partners, multiple payees, what solutions we might need or potentially have already, and this is kind of to the officer team, so that we can manage such projects into the future.
That's a good question. We've got, I think just to say about Civica, there's capabilities within that, and we are, as a group that's supporting South Downs and under the contract, we're looking at our projects and how we report on those and trying to better utilise the functions that are in the system already. Brighton Hove manage large-scale projects, large-scale capital projects along the same lines, so we'd anticipate that, I'd like to make sure that those improvements are put in place and take that feedback and make sure that we implement them alongside what we're already trying to do for project management and monitoring over the next few months.
Thanks, Craig. Does anybody else have anything they would like to ask Steph or highlight? No, I just remember when you've come to us before, we've always talked about how do we scale this up across the park, you know, how do we actually do that? I kind of sort of thinking our knowledge hub is a little bit of that work, and the synergy of that. I don't know if you're talking to that team.
Yeah, so we work really closely with Sarah Osmond. She's virtually become one of our team, quite frankly. She comes to all of our events. She's amazing. Yeah, we've looked at Knowledge Hub. The only limitations for that is obviously the boundaries of it, and where we sort of expand upon that, and also how willing we want to share this far and wide, the tools and the legacy of OVCA, and whether our community groups seem to have an aversion to signing up for anything.
Yeah, I know.
So that's something we're discussing with Sarah. But yeah, we're very much, Sarah and Chris, speaks to them all the time.
Okay, cool, that's good. And what was the other thing? Oh, brain. Sean, do you want to?
Give you a moment to
Yes,
think.
thank you.
I just want to say well done. You know, what a fantastic piece of work. And I think what's really exciting is not just, you know, the pictures of what's been delivered, whether it's solar panels or whether it's a garden or whatever, but I think for all of us trying to work out what climate change means and whether we can do anything about it or whether we just need to sort of paint ourselves white and, you know, and hide under the desk, you know, what this does, I think, is it allows people to engage and to have agency and to dispel some of the myths and take away some of the anxiety. I think that's hugely powerful. So not just the measurables, but that shift in people feeling like they can do something about it, I imagine. And I think that's really powerful. So I think, you know, just to reiterate what James says and to answer Daniel, I think we really would love to carry on doing more of this, and we just need to find the right way to do it. But also to enable these organisations, like James says, to be able to get funding for themselves and to move beyond being just very grassroots. And some of them maybe they will never, and that's fine, and they need a support structure as well. But I think, yeah, it's proven to be a really fantastic model. So, yeah, well done. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really inspiring. I've remembered what it was. Because the One Planet project came out of this too, didn't it? Because I remember going to some of those events and we were mapping different groups, were sitting in a room together, realising they were connecting, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So One Planet didn't get the full funding when they went for it. And on paper, I think it would have been amazing, but it hasn't got the sort of support behind it at the moment to actually take that forward in any real meaningful way. But yeah, that was one of the routes we were talking about. But actually, I didn't mention at the end, devolution's fundamentally one of the reasons we got the legacy project, because we've got such an amenable district council. And Daniel, I think I presented at one of your meetings that you were at, yeah. The partnership between SCDA and the role holders, SCDA of ESCO and South National Park, has been absolutely phenomenal. I've forgotten what I was going to say now, Vanessa. It's catching.
It was, oh God, sorry. No, it was about One Planet.
Yeah, so
That's where I started. Yeah.
I think, yeah, One Planet is something we looked at, but we've ruled it out for now unless it gets any substantial support behind it.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at, I was talking about devolution.
Yeah.
I'm there again. So yeah, so the loss of Lewes District Council, you know, something better might replace it, we just don't know, but the loss of Lewes District Council for us is quite impactful. They're a really amenable district council, they're an enabler, they bring groups together. So and a lot of our legacy plans hinged on them. Being the group that would hold the data, etc. Because we thought if we hold it for the park, for that end of the park, do we have to do it for everyone in the park? So actually it was very helpful to have this council there. With them not going to exist, we've got to find an alternative mechanism for the groups to share and be brought together. I mean, it might come in the form of the Merrill and the unitary councils, we just don't know. But we've got to put something in place now before that happens to replace them. So that's kind of sad for the community. That a lot of the community are very worried about what will happen when the district council ceases to exist because they are so supportive.
Yeah. No, thanks, Steph. Great. Thank you so much. Do we need to do a show of hands? No. That's it. Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you for coming in. Yeah. Thank you. Great. Okay. Going to move on to item 12, appointments of committees and outside bodies, and I'm going to pass over to Richard Sanderford.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether I can quite meet that level of enthusiasm. But this is, of course, appointments for our committees for the next year, so it's very important. This is your annual report, members, through which you do appoint to the committees of the authority for the coming year. The proposed committees themselves are set out with their terms of reference in Appendix 1, and the proposed appointments to the committees are set out in Appendix 3, with the chairs and deputy chairs in Appendix 4, both of which are on the table before you. There's also the proposed appointment of a co-opted member to the Policy and Resources Committee after Maurice Finlay, who was one of our original co-opted members, came to the end of his appointment. And the name and bio for the person proposed is in the exempt Appendix 5, which, if you wish to discuss any matters in that appendix, we need to consider moving into private session for. Finally, this report also appoints to outside bodies, which includes the appointment of trustees to the National Park Trust as well. And these are set out in Appendix 7, which again is on the table before you. Just a note on one of the bodies, the Hampshire Rural Forum. Since the report was published, we've been informed that the forum is no longer in operation, so there's no appointment proposed there. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Does anyone have any questions on these committees or anything? No? No one wants to go into private session? No? Excellent. Oh, I see a show of hands then for all the recommendations, please. Thank you so much. Great. So we're going to move on to item 13, the revisions to the standing orders. Richard, this is you again.
Thank you, Chair. I won't say much on these. The report itself proposes a number of changes to our standing orders following our annual review of them and how they're operating. I don't propose to go through the changes individually. They're all summarised at paragraph 2.1 of the report in the table there, and the resulting changes to standing orders are highlighted as track changes in the document itself there at Appendix 1. If you do have any queries or questions related to those changes, I'm very happy to answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do you have anything you would like to raise with Richard? No? Thank you so much, Richard, for going through these and amending them every year. I know it's a really important job. Really appreciate that. Okay, so members, can I see a show of hands for recommendation, please? Thank you. That's great. Okay, item 14, revised capital programme, and I'm going to ask Craig as interim Chief Finance Officer, to introduce this report. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll provide a brief introduction to the report and just hand over for any questions or comments on it. So the purpose of the report is to seek approval for an uplift in the capital programme for 2025-26 of £902,000. This is following the announcement of the capital grant allocation for the authority back in April. The report's also seeking approval to delegate authority as per recommendations 2 and 3 to allow greater flexibility to assist in the delivery of an agile capital programme, which will allow the capital grant to be spent in full. There is a risk, if it's not spent in full, that it has to be repaid back to DEFRA, which is outlined in the paper. Just to ensure sound governance remains in place, any agreed amendments will be reported in line with the financial management reports and full implications outlined in those papers. Yeah, happy to take any questions on that.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Before I ask if anyone has any questions, I just wondered if Melanie, as chair of P&R, because this came to P&R last week, a couple of weeks ago, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vanessa. Yes, I mean, I think all members who attended the budget workshop had a briefing on the increase in capital allocations to us, which sort of balances out the decrease in our revenue funding, and the importance of capital budget being spent within year, as Craig has said. Therefore, it's vital that the officer team are able to be fleet of foot to change projects where they're not working, to amend them where there's difficulty, and to make sure that we spend the full allocation that we have. And so the recommendations in the paper were supported by the P&R committee and recommended to the full NPA for approval. I think we did talk about the distinction between recommendations 2 and 3. That recommendation 2 is the what would be done, and recommendation 3 is how it's done. And so that's sort of dividing up the responsibilities, but making clear that we can shift the how as long as we stay within the what, or we can change the what and the how. So I think that's the way to try and be as swift as possible and to share the load between officers and members.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Melanie. That was fantastic. Andrew, I can see your hand up.
Yes, just a matter of really clarifying something. It's quite possibly something which was brought up at a previous meeting, but I was brought up to know that a flail was a hand tool. and we're spending £165,000 on these, on more than one of these, it appears. Could somebody clarify what a flail is which has been acquired, or flails are which have been acquired?
Yeah, I mean, I've got one. I mean, I have got my own. Yeah. Yeah, I want to collect. I want one with a collect. I have to say. No. But it's you put it on the back of a mini tractor, and it smashes up grass and quite scrubby ground. It's a big bit of kit. I mean, it's not a hand kit. It's not hand. Mine use hydraulics.
Those of us of a certain age would remember them being used to winnow corn. You used to use a flail in.
Yeah. I don't think we have the workforce to go by hand these days. Is that okay, Laura? Robert.
Thanks, Vanessa. I'm quite interested in just a slight quality of information. We've got two big investment projects we've got going on, one of which is the Seven Sisters car park, one of which is Centurion Way, and we've obviously put more money into both those, and I don't think any of us are going to object to that. What I think we should be doing is explaining how much we've spent on those projects. Not just this year, but last year, the year before, how much of actually, for our SIL money, of our spending overall, just put in context of how, if we went back to when we bought the Seven Sisters, we were talking about some very different numbers of how much we're going to spend on it. Same thing with the Centurion, where those numbers in the last many years I've been sitting here have drifted up. I would really like us to be absolutely clear it's public money. How much have we spent on those two projects, and how has that changed from what we originally planned to spend? I think we have a duty, as it's public money, to explain on those two projects what they've costed us.
Yeah. Yeah. Vicky, do you want to do that?
Thank you. We are looking at a revised project reporting format for reporting to the P&R committee, which does take in all expenditure from inception to completion. So when these projects run over a number of years, we'll be looking at every individual source of income and how we've used that, how we've applied that from beginning to end of the project. So you should be seeing those at the P&R committee going forward. In terms of how much we spend on Seven Sisters as a site, as a whole, that would be a different piece of work, because this is divided into individual little projects. So we could obviously consolidate that.
Thank you. That was slightly my point. I'd like to see that consolidated number, because actually splitting it down into 4 projects, 5 projects, 6 projects, or splitting the Centurion Way into different projects slightly misses the point I'm making, which is I want to see how much we spent on it overall and put that in context of what we said we were originally going to spend, and just seeing how that's changed over time.
Yeah, and I'm also going to I just wanted to say, because they're two quite different things, aren't they? I think with Seven Sisters, we've had lots of available pots from different places that have come up, and we've sort of grabbed that money and been able to spend it, especially like things in the cottages, on the water, and all that. So and Centurion Way is slightly different, but Sean, you wanted to come in here.
No, I think that's absolutely right on Seven Sisters, and I did ask a few months ago, I think, and I did have a sort of outline of what that looked like, because we were trying to get a sense of the value for money. Seven Sisters is slightly different because we try and make sure that the whole, whatever we invest pays for itself, and that's the sort of model that we look at. Certainly with the car park, that's the idea, is to increase the number of car parking spaces, improve the sort of, I don't know what the right term is, so the hard surface, etc., that we're putting in there. Centurion Way, we know it's a project that's been going on for a long time. I think it was raised this morning as well. This isn't SIL money, this is capital money, but we do need to have a look and see what we think the value for money of that project is over time. It's a challenging project because we've had to do it in certain sections, but ultimately I think we need to improve how we write the business cases for these, so that you can see one document that says this is how we think what we think the projected value is going to be in 20 years. This is the visitor numbers. This is how we get the value for money in terms of health and well-being benefits and so on. And we don't do that particularly well. It's something that we really want to focus on this year. So you should see that coming through. But it's a really, really valid and excellent point.
Thanks, Robert. Tim Burr.
At our meeting on the 27th of March, we discussed capital strategy. And one of the points made in that discussion, I quote the minutes, was with regard to capital expenditure, they, members, would like to see more emphasis on investing in assets that could yield a longer-term return, not just invest to save projects, to which one might add now, I think, the necessary work of reclassifying expenditure in order to be able to make the full and intended use of the capital that we have been granted by the government, and use that where possible to support our current expenditure as well. But my point is this, that I did rather miss from this paper that emphasis on using capital to generate future income. I think that it's not just about looking at ways of replacing revenue with capital, but ultimately there is an expectation in government that we will become more self-sufficient. We will become more canny at using capital for investment in ways which make us more self-supporting in future. And I simply wanted to query that whether that should have received more emphasis in this paper.
Yeah, James, did you want to come in?
Well, in terms of the project process and the criteria, that's probably more one for Laura, but I know that that point about future income generation is absolutely critical to that process, Tim. I think the issue is that obviously this landed on us in April, and what we're looking at now is what we can deliver quite quickly, and that probably leads to a focus on investor save rather than income generating projects, simply because they tend to need more planning. However, what we're doing now is getting ourselves in order so that if this capital trend continues, next year we think we should have some projects that possibly lend itself more to the revenue end, and we're having those conversations now so that we're prepared.
Yes, please, Laura.
Thank you, Chair. James is absolutely spot on in what he said, and I would add another kind of layer of that conversation, which is that the definition has changed from DEFRA, and this is critical around what we spend and how we spend this. That has been checked with SIPFA. Vicky is queen of the definition. She is the arbiter of decision making, supported by the rest of us, but to make sure that we're in a really good position at year end to be able to defend ourselves to the auditors. You know, we have to spend this money appropriately, and Investor Save is absolutely in there. Income generation opportunities is absolutely in there, but also we need to think about the impact on the natural asset and projects that improve the natural asset as well. So that's a new kind of connotation, I suppose, in our understanding of the new DEFRA definition.
Yep, Sean.
Yeah, just one final point, I think. Notwithstanding that, which is right, because we've got to spend it on different things, but, you know, I think, as you know, absolutely focused on our ability to generate more income. You know, we've got a very specific target on that, and we want to grow that. But I think James's point is right, is that some of that takes a bit of lead time. Some of these actually will generate some income, but it's not going to be on the scale that we really want. So watch this space, I think.
Thank you. I mean, I think what you've done in such a... Oh, sorry, Debbie, sorry. Oh. Yes, please, of course.
Thank you. So, as the Hampshire County Council representative to the South Downs National Park Authority, may I ask, the one item with the biggest reduction in capital budget, in fact it's removed, is the Queen Elizabeth Country Park partnering arrangement. May I ask, is our partner in this, i.e. Hampshire County Council, are they aware of this? Because this is 25-26, we are in that year now, so if we're now taking that budget out now, have they been made aware of that?
Tim Slaney, do you want to explain that?
Thank you, yes. Members may recall, if you were here last year, we were looking at potential acquisition, and that money was put aside for that acquisition. We've subsequently had some very positive conversations with Hampshire County Council. It's not for sale, the site we were looking at, but there are other ways we've been working in partnership, in collaboration, not just around the site that was potentially up for sale, but Queen Elizabeth Country Park, but also Butser Hill adjacent the Ashford Hangars. So other work is going on there that doesn't actually cost this capital sum. That's the point, and they are aware, to answer your question.
Great, thank you. Oh, Stephen, God. I need to go on holiday.
Hello, Chair. Thank you.
So
I'm a
nice
long
to
way
see
away.
you.
Just some clarification on point 3, if I may. I'm clearly missing something, and I apologise for that. But it says to delegate authority for contracts of 0.2 million or greater. So is that intentionally open-ended, and is that the intention of the recommendation to give it a lift from where it is now to somewhere in the future, where there's more flexibility? Because it seems odd to me to have an open-ended amount in the words or greater. Usually in recommendations, it's up to but not exceeding X amount. So am I misreading this? Am I missing something? What's going on here? Thank you.
Vicky, do you want... Okay, Richard.
Yeah, so there is up to £200,000 is already delegated to officers. Before this, procurements of over £200,000 would come to the Policy and Resources Committee for approval. However, because of the need to act quickly on some of these projects to deliver within the year, we're recommending the delegation of the approval of those procurement arrangements over £200,000, over that threshold, to be to the Director in consultation with the Chair, rather than having to come to a committee itself.
Stephen.
Okay, so for clarity, there is no upper amount on what's being delegated here?
Yes, that's correct. Okay. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Sean?
There is a practical upper amount in that this is just for the capital budget, and obviously we've only got so much of that. So, yeah, I think I'd be surprised if we lumped it all into one and put it all as one £2 million contract.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think we would be too. Does anyone else have anything? No, I just wanted to reflect on the fact that this came in April, and if you had been allocating large sums of money to a quick get income project in such a short time without lots of scrutiny, I'd be really, really nervous. It's like these things do take time to make sure that they're really, really credible. And I know that some, the projects that we have got on here are things that we were kind of already sort of doing and starting. So if this feels right this time in this sort of turnaround. So yeah, I don't think we should have been expecting some amazing get-rich-quick scheme in that time. Yeah, Sean.
That's absolutely right. I think these are good projects. I think I would like to see, going back to Tim Burr's point, we're going to develop an even better way of assessing them as we go forward. If we get more capital, and hopefully we'll get a 3-year capital settlement, which means we can really plan properly. We do also have a pipeline of other projects waiting to be assessed if these don't go ahead or if they are delayed. So we have other options as coming forward. So this isn't the sort of limited amount, and those are still going under assessment. And if anyone has an idea, we rather annoyingly say to them, well, put it in the pipeline and we'll assess it. So yeah, we've got a process now that's going quite well.
Great, thank you so much. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? No. Well, I think we'll go to the recommendation then. If I can see a show of hands for that, which is on the screen in front of you. That's great, thank you so much. Brilliant. Item 15, budget monitoring. Back to Craig.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this report outlines the financial position for the authority for the year ending 31st March 2025. This being an underspend position of £731,000 after considering the carry-forward requests of £870,000, which are outlined in the appendices to the report. The Board are being asked to approve recommendations 1, 2 and 4, which relate to those figures. The underspend position for context is an improvement from the month 9 position of £571,000, mainly attributable to an improved investment income position, an underspend on contract management, and lower activity on the Section 106 contracts. The Board are also being asked to approve the capital variances at year end. These are all being treated as variances in this instance as a result of the previous paper and the recommendations outlined there. And finally, the Board are being asked to approve the release of capital funding that was previously set aside for projects for 25-26 of £305,000. This can be released as a result of the new capital grant coming in, and will go towards a system of any revenue costs associated with delivering those capital projects or other pressures that the authority is facing during the year.
Great, thank you, Craig. Members, do you have any questions? Yes, Daniel.
Thank you. Underspends are always good news, but doesn't to make sure that it's not necessarily because, does it ever indicate at all that our budgeting process is possibly a little bit too, I don't know, the word flabby comes to mind, but sort of, but perhaps sort of not quite as aggressive as it ought to be?
Mm-hmm. Sean?
Yes. Yeah, I think is the short answer. It's something we're really focused on. Our forecast spend is not as good as I'd like it to be. We've set a very specific target for what we want the underspend to reduce by next year. I think for me, it's one of those sort of apex indicators that gives you an idea of how well your project management's going, how well your understanding of your optimism bias, of your risks, etc. We're not terrible, but we could do better. It means, and actually given the situation we're in with the uncertainty of the spending review, it isn't bad news because it allows us to put a bit more into reserve and gives us a bit more of space if we get a bad settlement, an unexpectedly bad settlement. We've got time to think about how we restructure or reorganize ourselves. I'm not expecting that, but just, because we don't know, and given our, once bitten, twice shy kind of feeling, given what we got last year. But we're really keen to sort of really focus down on how we do that. And part of that is the shift that we've made in the role that Laura's been doing, but also Laura's successor, and how we've defined that job description is really to bring some rigor into that project management and that program management, so that we can reduce that underspend. So it's not a terrible thing. I'd much rather be in this position than the other way, but I'd much rather us be better and know, because we've missed an opportunity in the year. Thankfully, it's not money we have to hand back, but sometimes it is, and that's really, really tragic. So yeah, short answer is yes.
Thanks, Daniel. Robert.
Just a matter of information, I need some explanation. Page 124, it's one of the appendices on this core. There's a £424,000.
I can't hear you very well, Robert. Could you speak? Sorry, drag
I'm
it
on
towards
page 124, right at the end. My question is about the £424,000 contribution to bad debt provision. Can someone explain what that is?
Oh, yeah. It's here. Cool. Who wants to? Oh, Vicky.
This relates to the winding up of the South Downs company that was operating the Seven Sisters site. In October, the company was effectively, what are we calling it? Sorry, it's not wound up. It's made dormant, sorry. And at that point, the company had debts to SDNPA for the staff and associated costs of that sum. So effectively, we had to take into account the fact that that bad debt was not going to be repaid by SDCO Limited. So that's effectively hitting us in year.
So I'm going to follow that up.
Yep.
This is news to me. I'm sure it's not news to other people in this room who are on P&R, who probably are more on top of this than I am. I wasn't aware that we were going to have that scale of loss in the South Downs company we closed down. I'm sure other members may have been aware of it. I wasn't. I just would like an explanation. Were we expecting it to be that kind of loss? And if we weren't, what went wrong there?
I had made this information, I had cited the P&R committee on this previously. We didn't know the full extent of it. Also, what we need to consider as well is there's also a provision in the balance sheet for this that will mitigate that by 220k as well, once the company is fully made dormant in this current financial year. I did raise it at the budget setting work workshops.
Richard, do you want to come in here?
I was just going to mention as well that in the report you received in October last year, which sets out the arrangements for the governance of Seven Sisters within the authority, there's a table in there which sets out the financial matters and the breakdown of this. It sets out the financial position as £484,000, obviously with the £220,000 mitigation, which will come into play this year, which Vicky has mentioned. So just to say, it was set out in papers in public back in October.
Yeah, because that 220, that was a loan, wasn't it? That was there, that has been sitting there for years, that the trading company didn't use. Right. And then that's, yeah. Does anyone else have anything they would like to ask? Yeah, sure, yeah.
If I can just add a point on that, I think for me, and I'm not an accountant, so it's taken me quite a bit, and I'm not sure I've yet got my head entirely around how all of that worked. But ultimately, for me, it sort of gives, another reason why the decision to not use the trading company and to bring it into the authority to give us that more of a simple overview of the accounts, it really reinforces that. But overall, I think this means is the last of these sort of transactions that we have to make, and it will go dormant, and then everything will be in one place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Craig, yeah.
I think as well to say that we've been working through the first few months of this financial year to understand the true position of the SDCA. Anything that is not required from that bad debt provision gets released back into the revenue position for South Downs National Park Authority. So it is something that if all of that 424,000 is not required at the point of making SDCA dormant, it becomes a benefit in 2025-26. It's set aside as a provision as a best estimate as at the 31st of March 25, based on the position that we knew at that time.
Thank you, Craig. Members, do you have any other questions? No, okay. I'm going to ask for a show of hands for the recommendation that's on the screen in front of you. Thank you. Okay. So we've come to the end of the main items. Items 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20 are minutes from committee meetings that we're taking as read, that everyone agreed. And so I'm calling this meeting to a close at 2:30. Thank you.